Zenless Zone 0 is on its way to the 1.3 update, and as we get more and more characters added to the game, new drive disks and W engines together with the Shiyu defense changes, it's safe to say that the meta of Zenless Zone 0 has changed a lot since the game initially released. And so in today's video I'm going to be covering what are the best 5 teams in the entire game. So whether you are looking to build the most effective teams possible, or you are simply looking for validation on your sunken cost fallacy, then this is the video for you. And as I show the different teams, I'm not only going to give you the optimal versions of them, but I will also give you different alternatives as well as free-to-play options, so that if you don't have all of the characters, you can still make some very powerful and effective teams. With that being said, hello everyone, my name is DarkHero and let's get started. So let's start with the best team, and that is of course the newest and the hottest Bernice team. She really is the queen of double anomaly and disorder teams, as her ability to build up the fire anomaly very quickly as well as the afterburn that she can do while off field allow her to deal damage while other characters are on the field, so naturally pairing up Bernice with other anomaly characters is going to yield the most rewards. And so the current best team in Zenless Zone 0 would be none other than Bernice together with Jane Doe and Lucy, with Jane Doe being the on-field DPS character, quickly building up assault and dealing a lot of damage, and Lucy in the back as the support character to provide an attack buff to both characters. Alternatively, you could replace Jane Doe with Piper and make the perfect Sons of Koleda team, and while Piper may not necessarily be as strong as Jane Doe, she doesn't deal as much damage and she does build up assault a little bit slower, this team's performance is still going to yield great results, and the best part about it is that it is very free to play friendly, with Bernice being the only S-rank character. You could also replace Jane Doe and Piper for Grace to still maintain the double anomaly core, although unfortunately you're not going to get the additional ability for Grace, which means that she's going to deal a little less damage. Despite that, this team can still be very effective, especially if you get 1 or 2 Bernice's Mindscapes or her W engine. And in all of these teams you can replace Lucy with Caesar, as despite her attack buff only applying to the character that is currently on field and not both, she can quickly debuff enemies while also grouping them, effectively raising the damage output of the entire team, although Lucy ends up being the more beneficial support. Now for the next team we have the HyperAether, that entirely revolves around Zhuyuan as the main DPS. Now unfortunately this is the team with the least amount of teams available, as we currently lack dedicated units that can benefit Zhuyuan the most. So the perfect team would be to have Zhuyuan together with Xingyi as the stunner and Nicole as the support. Xingyi and Zhuyuan are really the perfect pair, as Zhuyuan is a burst DPS character that only likes to spend time on field whenever she has her ether bullets available, as without them her damage output drops off a cliff. And Xingyi is a stunner that likes to spend a lot of time on field by building up a lot of days on the enemy while also triggering the shock anomaly, but as she does so she's going to apply stacks to the enemy, increasing the target's stun damage multiplier by up to 80%, meaning that while the enemy is stunned you're going to be able to dish out a ton more damage. And Nicole is a great support, as she not only provides defense threat to the enemy, but she's also the only character that is currently present in the game that is capable of increasing the damage output of ether characters. Not to mention that you also get the additional ability for Nicole by pairing her with Zhuyuan. And you likely already have Nicole's W engine, which also provides you with some additional damage increase, making this team even more effective. And as a free-to-play alternative, you could replace Xingyi with Anby, and you would still get the additional ability for all 3 characters. And the best part about it is that everyone has access to Anby and Nicole from the very start of the game, so if you have Zhuyuan you can make this team. And the HyperAether team is actually my very best performing team, mostly because I have Zhuyuan's Mindscape 1, which gives you a lot more ether bullets and allows her to deal a lot more damage. But even without it, I do believe that Zhuyuan is a powerhouse, especially with her dedicated team, although without Xingyi she does lose out on a lot of damage, because again there's currently not many dedicated characters for Zhuyuan. Now the next team is going to be what I like to call the HyperAether team, which naturally revolves around having Jane Doe as the main DPS. This team is going to be different than the double anomaly teams, as we're not really going to be pairing up Jane Doe with other anomaly characters. You could pair Jane Doe with Grace for example, but by hyper focusing on Jane Doe you're able to get a lot more damage out of her. And in order to do so, we're going going to pair her up with Shinji as your dedicated stunner, which again is able to stun the enemy and massively increase the damage that you deal while the enemy is stunned, as she increases the stun damage multiplier by up to 80%. And then for the final slot, we're going to add a support character, which ideally would be Seth, which I know he is a defender, but he's going to act as a support character, but he provides a lot of value by not only reducing the target's anomaly build-up resistance to all attributes by 20%, but he also increases the anomaly proficiency of other characters. And as Jane Doe is going to proc assault over and over again, she is naturally going to benefit from having her lover on the team. And of course you get the additional ability for all three characters, as they are all part of the criminal investigation squad. Alternatively, you could replace Seth for Rina, although she's not going to be quite as effective, and you could even replace Seth with Caesar as well, increasing Shinji or Jane Doe's attack depending on who is on field, and making the enemy take more damage, although this team could be somewhat clunky as you have to keep swapping between different characters. Lastly, the free-to-play alternative, which I used a lot up until I got Bernice, is to pair Jane Doe and Seth with Lucy as the final character, as she provides a significant attack buff while also having her little piggies on the field to build up additional days, and is overall very easy to use. You simply use your EX special attack and swap to a different character, and only ever really go back to Lucy whenever you need to reapply the buff again. So keep in mind that even though Bernice has released into the game and she is a very powerful character that heavily benefits anomaly characters, Jane Doe is totally capable of performing exceptionally well on her own, and she does not need Bernice to be an amazingly powerful character. Now the next team on the list is going to be one that I talked about a lot here on the channel, and it's going to be the Mono Ice team, and I'm sure that we are all familiar with it at this point. So that is Ellen, Lycaon and Soukaku, with Ellen as the main DPS, having Lycaon as the dedicated stunner that can build up days and also reduce the enemy's resistance to ice damage, and Soukaku also providing a meaningful attack buff while also increasing Ellen's ice damage. This team is still performing very well, although the more recent limited S-rank characters have been outperforming Ellen, which is something that tends to happen with Hoyoverse games and them releasing the first limited character as a DPS. Now we actually do have some alternatives and improvements for this team, despite it not really having changed much since the game released. If you have Caesar, for example, you would be able to replace Lycaon with her, as her buffs are going to be very significant, and I've seen reports of Caesar outperforming Lycaon as a dedicated stunner for Ellen. Alternatively, you could go for Ellen together with both Lycaon and Caesar, making for a very comfortable team that is going to have no trouble stunning the enemy and is still going to perform very well. And finally, as a free-to-play alternative, you could have Ellen go with Anby and Soukaku, or even replace Anby with Koleda if you don't have a different S-rank stunner. That being said, we are likely going to be getting a character that is going to help boost Ellen's damage, simply because of the fact that Miyabi is likely going to be released not too soon. I would totally expect her to release on update 1.4, so we are bound to get a character that is going to boost ice damage, which is naturally going to benefit Ellen. So do not worry, Ellen havers, it is too soon to be doom posting yet. And the final team, which I think is going to surprise many of you, is going to be a mono fire team comprised of Soldier 11 together with Bernice and Lucy. Now the reason why this team is performing so well, on top of Soldier 11 being a fairly competent damage dealer, is that of course you have Bernice as a very effective damage dealer by providing that damage output while off field. So you're able to have both characters deal damage at the same time, and by having Lucy on the team you're able to buff both characters at once. Alternatively, you could replace Lucy with Caesar. As I said before, the attack buff is only going to go to the character that is on field, but she's able to group enemies and debuff them so that both Soldier 11 and Bernice can deal additional damage. And if you don't have Caesar or Lucy, you can also go for Koleda, but you probably already have Lucy, especially as she's been given out in one of the events, and she becomes great with mind skips as well, so go with her instead. However, if you want to go for a more traditional team, following the DPS, stun and support structure, you could pair Soldier 11 with Koleda and Lucy, having a stunner and a support, or for a more free-to-play alternative, having Soldier 11 with Ben Bigger and Lucy. Though again, you're going to have much better performance by having Bernice on the team. The Soldier 11 and Bernice teams are not going to outperform the Anomaly teams, and especially the double Anomaly teams, but if you like Soldier 11 and you have Bernice, and you don't really have another Anomaly character already built, then this is still a very powerful and fun team for you to play with. At the end of the day, what's important important is that you play with the characters that you enjoy the most, not only in the way they look aesthetically, but also how they play. But if you are looking for a guide on how to build the best teams in the game, then I hope that this has been helpful to you. Let me know if you guys also want a video like this, where I go over the best teams for each S-rank character in the game. Your support is of course very appreciated, and subscribe to win the next 50/50 or I owe you a cookie.